Hello, everyone. It's great that you are here, and a warm welcome from my side. I am Nathalie Grazza, and I'm here as the chair of the Critical Infrastructure Working Group of the Swiss Cyber Institute. And normally, I work at the Federal Office for National Economic Supply. So today, we are going to talk about digital identities. And for that, we have 4 experts with us today, and I kindly ask you to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I need a microphone. Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Katrin Cecile Ziegler. I'm a German digital economist and tech journalist. Also, I'm the ambassador of the European Digital Society. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion. So my perspective is the one from society as well, the European one.
My name is Christian Heimann. I'm from the EID team from the Confederation and working on our EID Switzerland.
Hello, my name is Olivier Pallier. I'm a principal AI engineer here at Adnovum. I'm specializing in digital identities. That's what I do on my everyday job, building systems around it. I'm also very happy to see so many people here, and I know that online plenty of people joined as well. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation as well.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Urs Fischer. I'm the head of innovations at Health Infonet, and I'm dealing with digital identities since many, many years in a private sector, also in a B2B sector.
Perfect, thank you. So as you heard, we have a lot of different perspectives and backgrounds with us, and I'm curious about the discussion. So first of all, digital identity, what is that? And over the couple last years, a lot of research has been done. And before we start discussing, I'd like to get clear on the definition. So a digital identity is basically an individual's digital presence. It can be defined as a set of digitally captured attributes, such as name, date of birth, or gender, coupled with credentials that are linked to a unique identifier to identify a person and thereby facilitate transactions in the digital world. And multiple leading firms have been doing research about this during the last years as well. And they agreed that digital identities or digital identification need to have the 4 following attributes. So the first one is that individuals only have one identity within a system. The second one is that individuals need to be aware that their information is captured. As a third point, the identity is verified and authenticated to meet government and private sector standards and regulations. And as a fourth point, that individuals can be ensured that their data is safe and they have access to their personal data. So a digital ID can authenticate an individual remotely over digital channels, unlike paper-based IDs, basically, and track their actions and collect their information about personal data, behavior, and interactions. And this enables a lot of use cases, a lot of potential for anything, basically. But first of all, I'd like to know your definition of digital IDs or identities, and if you agree with these points that I just read out. So, Olivier, maybe from a more technical perspective, what do you say about this?
Okay, thank you. From a more technical perspective, I think you said most of it already. So the digital identity is the whole body of information that relates to a person or an organization or even a device online that is used to perform authentication. And the whole summary about digital identity is all this information that you leave online, which are often collateral to the authentication method, and just used there while collecting this information to perform the authentication. So digital identity is several things. It's preferences, it's traits, and it's attributes that you have. The attributes, they change a lot. So for example, your job is one part of your attributes. Your preferences is what you like to do. That's your purchase history. And your traits are the color of your eyes, things that never change. And all these together form a unique online presence that identifies you and which is used to perform this digital presence. from a technical point of view, I think that's a good summary.
Yes, I agree.
But like I said,
definitely.
you said most of it, so I'm just rephrasing, paraphrasing. And I think maybe with you, Urs, we can have more insights on what the extent of it is.
Yes, please. For me, certainly I agree with all those definitions. That's true. That's the technical standpoint. And but I would like to add there some other thoughts to that. And one of them is there are identities for individuals, but there are also identities for companies and other also machines. And I think this is also a very important part. And then the other is the other aspect is, okay. So then the other aspect for that is that a digital identity is also a chance or a tool to bring trust in real digital processes. So also bring efficiency in digital processes. And I think this is a very important part, because only with digital identities, we are able to do digital processes. And that's a very important part.
Okay, that's a great point. Maybe Catherine, you want to follow up on this?
Yes, I also think the definition, I agree in principle. Yeah, it's a very administrative perspective, but digital identity serves also other functions. And you also mentioned it a little bit. It's about providing and collecting information about my thoughts, about my needs and my actions. So digital identity is also a commercial good, and it approaches to my analog or my physical identity and to my personality. And that brings me to the point of what I miss in this technical or administrative perspective, and it's the requirement of digital sovereignty. So I think it's important that we include it in the definition that I am still the person who decide what is my digital identity. So I determine this identity, and I'm also in control what I want to share of it. So
I want to follow up this. Absolutely, my thoughts that the digital identity represents me, but I should be the one deciding which facade of myself I want to show to the outside. So if I'm the employee and I work, I show my identity as an employee. When I'm working in my music club, I'm just a member of this music club. And so it goes on. So I need to control what attributes or what elements of my identity I really want to show. And that's the direction where our project in the Swiss government heads to. We really want to create an ecosystem where an EID exists. The EID itself is the state-approved identity, like you can imagine, like a digital identity card you will put in your wallet, not in your physical wallet, but in your smartphone wallet. And then you will be able to show this information to anybody who you want to see the information. So it's your decision, and the other one has just to respect the standards, but can be anyone who wants to check this. This is like the basic idea we are heading to really go into your direction.
This already brings us right to the practical use cases of digital identity. One driver for the adoption of digital identity is the promise that companies, or also the government or private people, can reduce risks and save money by using a digital identity. And this could increase efficiency and outsource, for example, the know your customer process. And I'm curious to hear about your experiences. Maybe what are your personal touch points with digital identification on, for example, a personal level or on a business level? Maybe you'd like to start, Catherine?
Well, I have to emphasize that I come from Germany. So Germany is one of the most backward countries when it comes to public digital services. We have an e-ID card since 10 years, but only 10% of the German population use it, not because of mistrust, because the APIs are very poor and there are nearly no applications. So for example, I wanted to apply for a permit, parking permit for my father who has a walking disability, and it wasn't possible. So the service is not available because he's supposed to come to the office to identify him in physical way. Well, it's difficult for a person with a walking disability, and this also shows one case where it's really needed to have an e-ID. So I think in Germany, we use, because of this, more identification methods from private sector. For example, Google, Apple, yeah, because it's very comfortable to make an account just with 2 clicks. And this brings also a lot of ethical challenges. So.
Christian, yes. How does it look like in Switzerland?
In Switzerland, there is this current project, EID Switzerland, but EID is just one of a kind as we think in this project. So the EID should be one credential that persons has, but to prove the identity, this is not a daily use case, and we won't make it a daily use case. But therefore we have to think further, because there are some systems that needs to be built. People have to get used to the usage of such a verifiable credential. And very often, to prove the identity is not the real purpose. Do you go to any governmental office just for pleasure? No, you want a service, and often your purpose is to get any kind of document which will prove something else. So the EID is just a start. We have to think other digital proofs, as for example, the parking card you mentioned, but it can be the extract of your criminal records or something else that a third party will need. And then we go into the thinking of digital credentials and ecosystem. And that's my saying. The EID is just the starting point we need, and it will not be the daily usage of the EID, but maybe daily usage of verifiable credentials we want to bring up to accelerate the whole ecosystem.
Urs, you recently told me that you have a real practical example to follow up on this definition of Christian.
Yes, and perhaps I have to say first that if we're talking about digital identities and also the usage of it, like we heard it from Germany, there we're talking about private use cases, and especially these use cases, they are very seldom. So you do it once a lifetime, once a year, or something like opening bank accounts or applying for something. So the in my business that we are doing at Health Infonet, we're dealing with health professionals, and there the personal aspects with the professional aspects are very heavily mixed. So there we can see the usage of digital identities in a professional life. So, and there we got use cases where for instance, doctors have to prove their abilities to do something in daily processes. And I think in the B2B part, that there we get really a nice chance to establish these ecosystems that are possible, that allows to use or to increase the usage of digital identities. And then I'm also with you that proving the identity is not a day-to-day case, but processes that are basing on approved identities, they are. So I think that's a chain.
Do you have a concrete example of a daily usage?
Yes, for instance, if a doctor wants to use a special service where a very specialized service in the internet, he has to apply with his identity and also his capabilities to prove that he's really allowed to use that service, and also afterwards to invoice it, and to also with the health insurance to prove that everything is in the right order.
One thing which I think is also important is we talk about proving your identity, but I think eventually this is not going to be the biggest use case, like you both said, but rather using this digital identity to prove some aspects of your personality or your life or anything which is required in the current setup. As an example, you want to buy something which requires you to be an adult. At the moment, you need to show your ID. It means that the people watching that, seeing that ID, will have all information about you, your name, your age, your address, whatever is on this ID card. But with digital ID and verifiable credentials, as we say it now, then it will be possible to just give a valid proof that you're actually old enough to buy alcohol without giving any other information. And I think that's also important to see that the digital identity is something which is going to be crucial to us, not necessarily to prove it every day or to use it every day, but to prove some other aspects which are required throughout our journeys.
That's a really interesting point about not showing every information on your ID, which brings us to the probably dark side as well of not only the real IDs, but also the digital IDs. We hear a lot of bad news about data breaches and cyber attacks. It basically happens every day. For example, a French music or online music streaming service suffered a data breach that leaked more than 200 million user data in 2019. But also, for example, a famous password manager lost over 25 million user information with also encrypted password vaults. These are just two examples of dozens of cybersecurity incidents. And there is no doubt that security is one of the biggest problems with digital identification or challenges. And what do you think are the real risks and threats considering digital identity? So on the one hand, the security part, but on the other hand, also there is a ethical part, which is more your perspective, I think.
There is an ethical part, but first of all, I want to say, I don't think there's any way out of a digital identity. So of course we have the problem of security and we have to find technical solutions for it. And with every technical solution, we also have to think about the risk. So I think from a social perspective, the biggest risk is the loss of control. And with this risk, some questions arise. For example, where is my data stored? Is it central stored or is it decentral stored? If it's central stored, of course, there is the risk of tracking. And we can imagine that cyber attacks with digital identity will also happen. So maybe also for a private person or citizen, there will be the problem of a huge bounty, as we know it from the B2B sector. So we have to face these challenges. The next one is, for example, the question, do we have a long life unique identifier? I don't know. I think it's not decided in Swiss. Yesterday, the European Union, there was a discussion and they voted against it. And I think it's also the right decision, because if you have a long life unique identifier, it's a loss of anonymity. And the third big risk I see is, will every company use my eID for login services? I mean, do really every company need it? Of course, we should separate it if we are facing financial institutions, bank institutions, or medical institutions. But if a company in e-commerce also use my login services, it's a creepy process. Yeah, we get used to it more and more. And of course, we can say we only share the data they really need. But who's responsible for the enforcement? That's a big question. Is it the company itself, Or is it the state? Or is it me? What if a company moves to another state? They already have my ID. So what is happening? So I think we should, I don't want to have to pull out my EID at every turn in the internet, because this is also a loss of freedom of expression, for example, also for marginalized groups.
I want to go on a point you mentioned and maybe a bit separate it. So to have a data breach doesn't have to necessarily to do something with identity. For sure, data might be connected to an identity, to personal information, but these are cybersecurity risks we have to become better and better. We will never fight everything, but we have to become better. To the point where a unique identifier in Switzerland is called the AHV number, so the social security number, but its use is very restricted to the governmental sector. So private actors cannot ask for the AHV number today, and they will not with the EID as well. So that's a point where we need an electronic identity with the characteristics to only release the data that is really needed. And this concept is called selective disclosure, which allows us just to really show, as Olivier told us, only certain point of data of the EID. As a whole, to a bit also mitigate or to defend these problems, we have to become a community, a sane, healthy community who is speaking together, who is really targeting together a secure world, because it's not everything happening before it, not all the technical stuff is built up to protect everything, but we need a system where we can communicate, where we can express ourselves about an actor who is untrustful or who is doing wrong things. And we need reactions to be made, and that's where you came in. Who is doing this with the new law? We propose we try to tackle these things, but we realize making the law that a lot of questions are already responded in the laws today existing, because the digital space is not an unregulated space. It's just a bit harder to get to the attackers.
So if there is no way out of it, and it will come anyway, what are the risks that we are willing to accept or that we need to accept if this approaches further? You want to say something about it?
Yes, please. And for me, it's very important that we really distinct between the real risk of using an identity and other cyber risks. And that's a very important part, because we have if you are having processes in a digital world, we have to secure the whole digital world. That's the part. And I think there are very nice technologies available, especially in Switzerland, that allow us to really create safe spaces. That's one point. And the other point I would like to mention there, that the risk that we are able to take is, first you have to know that there is a risk. So what I want to say is we should also invest in the education and the maturity of the people using digital identities. So we cannot move everything to the technology. There are also humans that should be educated and well behave in dealing with digital identities. And the last point I want you to make is, we should, if we want to avoid some things, we also tend to project everything into one topic, like a digital identity. So data breaches, loss of control, everything. But if we do not have a digital identity, we will have anyway data breaches, loss of controls, and things like that. So it's very important part. I think there are several aspects.
And I want to add, yes, the digital literacy is absolutely an important thing. That's also because a reason why we are communicating a lot. We hope really that the political discussion also helps to educate a broader audience than we have maybe today, which is quite technical, I think. And we also have to realize that sometimes our wishes or our hopes for digital identity, they are on opposite poles, like having the whole own control to be self-sovereign about the data we're giving. And at the same time, we want to have a certain third power saying us that our partner to whom we communicate now is the who he is. So we have to call again a third instance to know who is it. So we really have to educate that everyone understands in which moment, what action, what relation, and what evidence is now in the system to make the good decisions.
I also would like to add something. So you're right. If we don't have a digital identity, we still have cybersecurity problems and cyber risk. But it's very interesting. I saw the study, the Swiss study of Digitalbarometer, and it shows that the Swiss population has a very high trust in the national authorities. That's why you also decided to have the responsibility in Swiss and not the private sector. But the trust in the cybersecurity of the national authorities is low. It's only 20%. And it also shows the problems we have already in the B2B sector with cybersecurity. And now we open a new field with citizens too. So we don't have enough resources already for the B2B sector and the B2C sector. And now we need more and more qualification also with the citizens. And I think in Switzerland it's possible to have or to gain a high level of digital literacy from a European perspective. I see some problem. It's more difficult, but also you want to harmonize with an international level. So you will not use your EID only in Switzerland. You will always use it in foreign countries too. So you are also faced with the foreign problems too.
Yes, and I think that's a really important point because we always talk about the EID, and we've been talking about the EID here. That's the one for Switzerland, which is being made for us, by us. But digital identity is a topic which is going to be worldwide. So even if we can trust the government in Switzerland because it's a very good one, it's been here for years, etc. It's not necessarily the same for any government on the planet. But this EID is not going to be geographically limited. So we need to take that into account and try as much as possible to bring the control back to the person only in the identity, trying to move away from relying on third parties that give assurance and stuff. And I think this model that we have right now, when we are still depending on some kind of authority to prove that the person we're talking to is the right person, or that the credential issuer is the right person, is not going to go away. But if this is what we need to go through to reach the point where we're actually going to be really fully sovereign with our identities, then we can see that as a transition phase. But this is, like you said, obviously very difficult and very complicated to give away this trust. So yeah, for me, it's really also important to say, to go back to the first point you made about breaches and stuff like that. It is true that we do not need to have digital identities to have security breaches. But the fact is that with these digital identities, if there are breaches and your identity is compromised, then you can suffer direct personal attacks, and which increases the risk the same way it would do in the real life. So it is quite important.
Okay, these are a lot of super interesting points already about the risks that we face. But I also like to focus on the bright side of digital identification and to show some other use cases or benefits, or also who could benefit from it. So it could make our life extremely easy For example, when we are online shopping, we don't have to re-enter credit card information every single time. It's like a personal use case. And according to your personal experience, what is the real biggest adventure of digital identification on the one side for a person or an individual, also maybe for a business or for the government? Let's start with a personal perspective.
Not the personal one, but the social one.
The social one, yes.
Well, from a social perspective, I think one of the biggest benefits is convenience. It's very comfortable if you have the EID and have just a few clicks and can prove who you are, of course. Yeah. So also in an international context, you have a better communication to prove who you are, or even with taxes, or for Swiss people, if you live outside of Switzerland, and there are a lot of people outside of Switzerland, I don't know, your voting process will be easier, I think. So we have a lot of benefits. I think the biggest benefit is the economic one. So because there's a chance to increase the GDP. And if we have a look to Scandinavian countries, so digital first societies, we can see that the GDP increased between 3 and 13%. And also this is, I think, very important for Switzerland, and it's a big chance. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know the exact number today. If anybody knows in the audience, please tell me how much it will bring to us. But I think with the idea of an ecosystem of digital credentials, the big benefit is that we bring in semantics to all these data exchanges in a harmonized way between different actors, in a privacy preserving manner where needed, in a decentralized way. And this is just the goal we are really targeting today.
From my side, I think I agree with you that convenience is one great advantage of digital identities. It's easy to prove who you are. It's also good if this is standardized and you could do that throughout the world. It brings a lot of assurance as well that you're who you say you are. But mostly it gives you the ability to use services, to exchange with the economic landscape, by always remaining in control of the attributes that you want to share. I come back to this concept of privacy. I think that's for me the biggest chance for people using digital identities, that they can come back in control of the attributes that control their body, that describes their body, and that they can then freely choose if they want to share this identity details, attributes, or not. For me, it's getting control back on these identifiers, on our own online identity, which is the biggest benefits for the general population.
Can we also solve some problems with digital identification? Or you can also, of course, follow up on the other points.
Yes, I hope so, that we can solve some problems. And but we should, perhaps one point I wanted to make was we should solve problems, not cause problems. So what the point is there is when we're talking about convenience, it should also be convenient to use a digital identity. And I think there that brings me to the point of an advantage of the digital identities. If it's convenient to use, then we also have the chance to bring in efficiency in processes. And that's my point. That's a very important point, that we can solve problems in this way, that we have efficient processes also in business processes, in day-to-day life, where we have a lot of onboardings, offboardings, and also all these proofs that are needed. For instance, if you want to onboard to a special treatment or to a special group that is dealing with special data, today it's a huge thing, but we are working on processes where this happens almost automatically and gaining efficiency there, and also convenience that we also really can save time and money. That's a very, very important part. And I'm talking about B2B process.
Okay, so this already brings us to the future of digital identity. What could be possible, what is possible, what won't be possible, for example. And let's try to predict a little bit. For example, there is a huge debate going on about the EID in Switzerland as well in the European Union. And this will be a massive game changer for society and current processes. For example, with the voting process, which will be completely digitalized. And does anyone wants to share an example with us or wants to predict a little bit what he hopes that will happen in the near future?
First point, I want to clarify that the e-voting project is not the EID project. And I think the e-vote, the identification for e-voting is just a minor problem in that space. So we leave that on the side. I really hope that in a near future, let's say 2025, 26, we really know where we are going and we can start with an ecosystem with a lot of players in it on the basis we're now building. For sure, we don't know where we are going, but I'm quite sure to come back on what economics and what benefits we can take out of this. We at least should try. We really should try, because in every technical concept, you can find security issues or find points that are not totally clarified, either on the juristic side or on the technical side. But we have to go away together, as I said, as a community that really wants to be and work as a community, and then we can reach something which is great. And maybe European countries will join us. Maybe we are the pioneers in this place to go a little bit further or a little bit faster and in a more pragmatic way. This would be nice for me as well.
Yes, I hope so. We learn from other countries who were the pioneers. So I think it will improve it. I think so. My wish is for the future, first it's for Germany, that we improve the digital public services. And here I see EID is really a chance. Also, I think in the financial institutions to prove the right person on the data, and also in the medical one, I think it's really a huge chance and benefit. With the commercial sector, I worry sometimes, but I think it's important that we discuss and include all perspectives, like here in the round. So kudos to Adnovum, because that's the way how we build trust in such an ecosystem. And I think this is the most important part, yeah, to have the trust and acceptance.
Yes, I would. I'm totally agree with you, and I would follow that a little bit. It's if you look to the future and also a little bit the vision, what we could do with digital identities, it gives us the chance to do real digitalization, I think. And there is we also have the chance to create some trust spaces, trust rooms, data rooms, where we can collaborate together in a B2B way, or also in a B2C way. And I think that's the real point, that we create trust spaces where we can apply processes that bring real efficiency to the work of the people, or the needs that the people have. The base of that is you have to know who is in a trusted room and with whom you're dealing, and the base for doing that is a digital identity. What do you mean with real digitalization? I think also with real digitalization, I mean to create new processes for me, it's not scanning a piece of paper, having a PDF, and then we have a digital process. So it's just also having some new processes, some new aspects of work where we could, for instance, decentralize people that are working together, or just having some steps in physical processes left out because they are not used anymore, because we are knowing anyway some things that we had to prove before in another way. It's that there are a lot of examples where we could really where we can really gain efficiency, not to copying processes from the physical world into the digital world, just creating new processes that are made for the digital world.
Do you maybe have an example about this?
Do we have time, or no?
I lost the time. So,
no, it's really that we these are processes that data, for instance, data flowing directly in the name of a person into a system, and not copying some aspects again and again, and bring them into always the same process. There are yes, could based on that we could really create some nice process.
I have to think I had a really bad accident just 2 years ago, and was nearly dying. But when I was in a hospital, I had to answer first a lot of questions: who you are, what's your assurance, what happened, and everything. Do you have any other problems, health problems? And what's so difficult for me to answer. So if this is digitalized and maybe also centralized, yeah, there are problems, but there are also advantages. So I see, for example, this is a benefit, yeah. And also the chance of new business models, not only digitalization, but also new business models, yeah, to extend your customer base. There are so many chances.
So who do you think should work on that really hard? So do you think the responsibilities within the government, or also the private sector, for example, healthcare industry, to make that better?
Well, I think this is one of the most difficult questions, and I can't answer it. Who's responsible for this process? I would prefer if I can decide by case, you know. I can't answer, but it would be interesting what the technical perspective thinks.
Well, I also think it's a very good question, which is hard to answer, but I think part of the answer is delivered by Christian when he says that we should come up with this community trying to establish those new standards and these new protocols. And I think that's the solace for us is going to be in there. That's not one entity, be it the government or the private sector, that's responsible for this, but a whole community effort around this with people from many different sectors, a bit like we try to do today on this panel, that brings their inputs and their concerns to make sure that we go in the right direction.
I also understand my role as a representative of the Confederation, that we need to make a good base where business and use cases and things can happen. So that's why we are building infrastructure, but the Confederation will not be the one looking for everything. And that's what's great about our project as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So now I'd like to take some time to answer questions from the audience. If there are any, feel free to raise your hand, or also online. I think there is a chat where they can put questions.
Thank you. My name's Danny. I work as a principal for security assurance at Amazon Web Services. I heard many times that you would insist of using the digital identity on an everyday basis. Me personally, I would actually like to do that, because I think the majority of us knows how most people use credentials in a very bad way. They use passwords for 10 services. They do not use multi-factor authentication. They store passwords in browsers. And so they do everything that you should not do. And using a hardware piece and as an identification with hardware encryption, adding session keys, adding one-time passwords to the whole session would add so much more security. So why do you think we shouldn't use it in that way?
It's not to reply on this. I'm absolutely with you that using these cryptographical tools for a good authentication, this is great. But this does not really mean that you're showing your state-owned identity to the vis-a-vis. It's more that the third party who has already a relation to you knows that it's you. And this can be an EID, but this can be any other cryptographic key that you have to prove to be in possession or password or whatever factor you think of. So there I'm with you to use this on a daily basis. But in a general, when we speak, you should not be needed or forced to show your EID at the bus station to buy a ticket, at the hotel to buy a drink, at the whatever. There is this daily usage where we don't want to go into a direction where EID is just forced because it's so easy. We don't propagate it.
Wouldn't that mean that the EID is actually, sorry, that the EID is actually more the backend, where you store like the credentials and I do identify me on a piece with hardware, where I personally can use which part of the information that is stored on your backend is disclosed to the third party, as we now do by using Google or Apple or Facebook as credential services. But there we do not have the chance to decide on our own which part of our identity is disclosed to the third party. So I would like to have the state as an identity provider on the backend, giving me as a citizen the ability to use which part of this identity I am disclosing to who, by using a cryptographic hardware method.
But I think this is pretty much what is happening, no? In the sense that you have the issuers of the verifiable credentials that you can use. These are the trust parties or the IDPs. And then you decide what you want to supply, what you want to give. What you describe, I think this like a password manager or credential manager is to me one aspect of this digital identity, which is just one side of it for your interaction with the people. Like Christian said and Catherine said, this digital ID showing at the bus, so your state issued ID is something that's not necessary, all the information that's on there for all the websites you want to log into and stuff. So for me, it's something that we need to differentiate. On one hand, we have the state ID, so the EID, which has its called in Switzerland, or digital ID, speaking broadly. But then what you're referring to is more the authentication. And it's true that's how the digital IDs came to be. So first we had to authenticate website, and for this we created an online identity, which is made of all these attributes that we leave, but it's not necessarily what the digital ID will be in the end. I think this is more, again, going back to verifiable credentials and self-sovereign identities. It's giving you the control of being able to show what you want. If it's to log into a website, that's fine, but the website doesn't need to know that your name is so-and-so, that you were born there. Just need to know that this is you, you're the person who created the account, and that's enough. That's all the information you need. So this, all the security management, password management, credential management is one small aspect of the digital identity as a whole. Very important one, and but then we go back to the convenience advantages of the digital IDs. That's one way of doing it, but it's not the whole story, and I think it should not be limited to this.
But it will be included, that function.
It can be included, I assume. At least I envision it, yes.
Maybe there's one question from the chat. One user asked, will Switzerland's official EID support also third-party wallets or just an official government wallet? And I might add the second one as well. Is the Swiss government also going to offer a web-based wallet or only one on a mobile phone? So is it third-party wallets as well? And is it mobile phone or web-based?
Thank you for the questions out there in the space. To the first one, the proposed law we had in the public consultation had one article mentioning that everyone can decide its own mean to save, store, and present an EID. That means that the wallet choice, so to use another wallet than the federal wallet, will be given to store the EID. Now for the onboarding process, it's a bit different. The onboarding process, which to issue an EID at the end, has certain technical and security specifications, and using a mobile phone and having a hardened app on it, which is really built in a way that we have the best evidence that the real person is in front of the camera, we think should be in front of the camera. So there is like thought that in the federal wallet, one part will be this onboarding process, but at the end of the onboarding process, when the identity is verified and cleared, we let the choice to the user to decide now where the EID has to go, and there the private or third-party wallets can come in. And to the question if there is a web-based wallet, the law proposal is open in that way that there is just an application to be built by the government to make sure that a citizen can store and protect and present its verifiable credentials in a secure and state-approved way. But in a first version, this will be on mobile phone, because the basis is the best to build it on, but it's not exclusive following the law.
Thank you. And we also got a third question from Javier Cano. In these remote days, what about proof of we are who we say we are, even attending this conference? Yeah, of course, could be another name. How can we ensure who we are, who say we are? Anyone wants to answer that question?
Well, I can try, but I think at the end, it's all going back to what we've been discussing since the beginning. It's all about trust, giving maybe some technical backing to the trust, making sure that we're using state-issued verifiable credentials, which are renowned and trusted. But that's what it boils down at the end. Once the credential or the digital identity is established, do we trust it or not? That we will see with the acceptation of this concept in the next 10, 20 years, how that develops, and if this really is something which becomes a reality.
Yes, I agree, and that's exactly the point I made, because he's asking what about proofs and things like that. This is absolutely necessary if you really have to rely on people attending or knowing that who these people are and what qualifications they have to join a data space like this one. That's absolutely crucial. And I was talking actually a lot of my points I made were this kind of application or usage of digital identities. And the other one is what came to my mind to the other questions, and also to the piece of hardware. I was also talking about usability, and we should be very, very careful what we're doing and how we using the digital identities. If we and it goes also to the question like what kinds of wallets and what kind of where they are stored and how we prove our identity. I think there is in there has to be a lot of innovation, and also how we use this digital identity, because if it's going to be too complicated, it will not work. And that's the point. And there is not every person has at every time his mobile wallet with him, because there has to be also other possibilities to use it, because especially in professional environments, it's not possible. So there we have to be creative in the future.
So we even got another question from someone who says he is Andreas Eschlimann. Does the envisaged solution facilitate or even ensure that verifiers will declare the purpose of the processing of the personal data they collect? So once again, does the envisaged solution facilitate or even ensure that verifiers will declare the purpose of the processing of the personal data they collect?
Speaking for the EID law, the new law is very limited in adding new rules. So a verifier already today is a party who is receiving data, collecting data in some way, and has therefore is a technical juridical basis, a law to protect the data or the persons that the data belongs to. So the neues Datenschutzgesetz, who will enter in September 2023, for example. For sure, with the verifiable credentials, let's say a better quality or assured quality of data will be received. But at the end, it's a data point where, for example, my name, my birthday, and something else about myself will be registered, and it has to be treated like this, that the verifier really has to be sure that he needs the data he asks through the system, but it's in his, let's say, liberty to do it the correct way. So we in Switzerland, we are not going that far as the European Union wants to go, because they want to regulate all the verifiers in the whole system to know exactly what attribute for what reason will be asked somewhere. And this is just a bureaucratic nightmare for us, which will never turn out to be efficient nor effective. So better to leave a certain liberty, but to have also the information channels to say, okay, folks outside using the federal wallet, or also for others, through some kind of trust registry, we can maybe propagate this information. Be aware that this actor or this actor is just collecting data. He doesn't have to, he is not. And for sure, there are laws that can be used to take measures against these actors. But there is also like this mitigation way, really, to say, okay, people pay more attention, learn about that, and this, I think is the better way to go than just to try to regulate everything.
Okay, thank you. And we already had that question. Yes.
I would like to add something, because you asked, where is the problem if I ask for the EID, if there are some persons who have a password like hello or 1234, and there are really many people. And if you go on Facebook, you can see people upload their passport and they upload medical documents, and you don't know what. But for me, it's not a problem if you ask for my EID, if I have the choice. And I think this is really important for a democratic EID. I need to have the choice, do I want to use the digital identity or not? In some cases, it can really improve the security if there's absolutely no digital literacy, but we also have to face that an EID also needs some kind of digital literacy, even with a SSI on a mobile, yeah, and a QR code. I can sell my other friend to buy some alcohol or something, you know. So I think if we have the real choice, we also can have a real acceptance, and it's the basic of a democratic understanding.
Thank you very much. That sounds like a good point to finish. And oh, there is one more question.
Thank you. Christian, you mentioned that we should be careful that we don't regulate too much on the usage of the data. And I totally agree. Do you foresee, or have you heard any rumors around ein Datensparsamkeitsgütesiegel?
It's German.
It sounds German and it must be German. I'm sure that because of this liberal character, elements like this will and has to appear, like some certification about who is following all the GDPR rules or who is eben Datenschutzminimierung Standard, excellence, whatever this could be called. And these are always like the Gütesiegel, but they will be built up independently. And I don't see that the Confederation has to make up everything of this, because there is enough power outside. There are different goals to achieve with these things. We have just to watch that if such labels are created, that we make it maybe better than in other sectors, that they really stay valuable and are what they are tell to be.
So, hey, Christian, is there a possibility to, at the end, use the EID as a trust anchor, for example, for your pseudonym that you want to kind of move in the internet with? Because on one end, I believe that the ecosystem can grow today with use cases based on some of the mechanisms and some of the technologies that are out there. And we know that it is already proliferating. So that when the EID becomes available, it's going to be a very strong trust anchor to some of these use cases that are already being built by the private sector. So do you envision also some kind of verification of a pseudonym that this is a real person behind it? Because I think when you think about the situation of Twitter and social media and all of the challenges that you have with misinformation on the web, I think that can solve at scale, if adopted at scale, it can solve a significant problem of today's world.
As the main purpose for the EID is to identify someone, for sure it's not the primary role for an EID to make available such pseudonyms that are then backed up by the EID. There are different mechanisms that are possible, but it's always the question. Now you're somewhere where you enter a pseudonym, any title, any character string you want to put, and then therefore what's the interest of the relying party there? Maybe they just want to know, is it the real person behind? And so, okay, maybe there is some kind of attribute to ask that is enough to know, okay, it's a real person. Then it's a question, is it, if you want to know as a relying party, is it the same person as the one who has already registered ABC123, then again, you have directly to ask the right identification. So it's a bit a turning around question for me.
Yeah, I really wanted to kind of trigger something also in the minds of the people here, because it kind of drives that creativity of today's or the future ecosystem. You will be able to do so much with the EID, solve so many real world problems. So thank you for that answer.
It's interesting, the pseudonym, you only know, is it a chatbot or is it a person? It's not a prevention of misinformation. I know so many politicians and they tell a lot of misinformation, you know, in front of the person. So it doesn't prevent anything, you know. And also, I don't want to have Twitter my EID. I think Twitter is also, it's an open space also for the freedom of expression, and we need this. Yeah. So I'm not a fan of it.
Okay, so unfortunately we're running out of time, and I hope we can discuss these questions later during lunch and follow up on this discussion. Thank you very much for all your interesting points. Thank you to the audience for being here and joining this discussion. And I wish everyone a great afternoon and a happy weekend. And I hope to see you soon.